and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Speaking of Russia, now, since it seems to be obligatory to say it at this point in the overall Russophobic hysteria that is going on right now, I condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Full stop. I condemn it. Shouldn't have happened. I think that Vladimir Putin is a great big poopy head. All right? Anybody who thinks that I support Russia in this conflict, because I have expressed my real concern about propaganda, and I have expressed my concern about NATO buildup along Russian forces, and because I recommended the infamous John Mearsheimer video, a lecture that he gave back in 2015, which turned out to be eerily prescient, and also included a guest appearance by our friend Bill Tilford, the shortwave radio guy, asking a question. It's just kind of crazy how it all came together. The fact that I have my concerns about NATO's role and the U.S.'s role in all this does not negate the fact that I condemn what happened. So I want to make it perfectly clear.
Right.
However, I also believe in this thing called free speech and freedom of the press. And as I have been reporting, there have been some radio stations, independent, privately owned radio stations in the U.S. that are facing increased pressure because they continue to allow programming by Russia's state-sponsored media, specifically Sputnik. That's their radio network. All right. And Sputnik pays a lot of radio stations quite a bit of money in this country to run their programming on their stations. And and for many of these independent stations, frankly, Sputnik is a lifeline. It's very difficult if you're not a big, massive corporation, sometimes to keep terrestrial radio on the air. And Sputnik is keeping these organizations alive. But I would also point out that Sputnik radio, look, I get notifications from Sputnik. Sputnik does a pretty decent job of getting me information about world events. Do I necessarily agree with their position or their bias on these issues? Certainly not. But I like to get information from different sources so I can make my own decisions. And I like to point out to people, it's not just the content of the reporting, but it's also what a outlet chooses to report on. And when when any of us follow multiple outlets, we're going to get a better idea of what's going on in the world.
I agree.
Because there's just different agendas, and there's different sets of resources, and that's what you're going to find new information, and you can do your own research, which we should all be doing, which is why we have show notes on our own shows, because we want you to check things out. But apparently, and this is a really distressing situation. I don't think it's going to come to much, but it's very upsetting. A nonprofit organization has asked it's called the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. It is a nonprofit organization. It is not a government organization, but it represents nearly 30 Ukrainian American organizations, has asked the FCC to not only revoke the broadcasting license of WZHF, which is a Washington, D.C. radio station, but all 32 radio stations controlled by a couple named Arthur and Levon Liu, because they carry Sputnik.
Okay. No. So here's the thing. I want to make it very clear on our show. We've been consistent about this, and we're going to continue to be consistent about it. We're for free speech, and I believe we need to see all perspectives. Now, look, I understand that there's been a lot of propaganda from corporate media saying that RT America, Sputnik, and any Russian-affiliated media, state-sponsored media, is going to be propaganda. But let's remember, corporate media has done a phenomenal job in screwing up. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, we have to deal with the fact that corporate media, number one, covered up the Joe Biden story. Okay, that's what they did. They covered up the Joe Biden story with the Hunter Biden laptop in 2020. The New York posted that article, and 2 years later, only now did the New York Times confirm, and also the Washington Post confirm, that again, the laptop is real and it's true. Also, let's not forget how, again, in 2016, when Hillary Clinton was doing that whole, oh no, Russia's funding Trump, now the FEC is investigating her. for that claim because it turns out it's a false claim that she was making. And the New York Times was at first printing everything that Hillary Clinton was saying as the gospel. How can we forget that corporate media said that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Can we not forget the fact that, again, there was a thing called Russiagate? You know, that was the thing that was being promoted. Oh, wait, and let's talk about the numerous times corporate media went to bat for scumbag politicians like Cuomo and Biden when both men have a history of harassing and abusing and assaulting women. Both Biden and Cuomo had 8 different women, both of them, you know, Cuomo had 8 women and Biden had 8 women come forward saying that they were assaulting and harassing them. So again, this is a sad fact that the media is covering up. So before anyone says that, oh, Russian media is bad and all evil and state-sponsored, let's look at corporate media because I just gave a handful of records of their own hypocrisy. I believe in free speech and we must see every single perspective. And I believe in the intelligence of our audience to make their own conclusions and their own decisions on how things will turn out. Because here's the thing. We're not going to tell you who to think and who to vote for. I'm going to vote independent. So if anyone wants to vote independent or vote Democrat or Republican, that's on you. That's your decision for this midterm. I'm just going to tell you, we're just going to report to you guys the news and give you guys the fact. And hopefully all of you will be able to make the decisions by yourselves and know what it is. I find it unfair that we live in an environment where the media is now, and corporate media and big tech and the politicians are trying to dictate to the American people what we should think and what we should feel. In a free society, in a democracy, we need to have free, open press, and all of us must see all different avenues and perspectives and points of view. Sorry for that rant, but I think it's just something that needs to be said.
Well, here's the thing, okay? The National Association of Broadcasters, 2 weeks ago, reported on this. The National Association of Broadcasters is actually pushing for this kind of thing. They're asking people to stations to voluntarily not air Sputnik. And again, I don't think that is an appropriate thing for the National Association of Broadcasters to do.
No, it shouldn't.
As a matter of fact, a First Amendment attorney, Robert Korn Revere, was quoted by Communications Daily saying that taking away licenses from stations that broadcast the wrong politics is the kind of thing Putin does, not the USA.
Yep.
That is something that we have in this country, that very offensive things can be said in the press, and you have a right to do that. People have a right to react. They have a right to turn off the station. They have the right to reject it. They have a right to mock you. They have a right to rebut. But the fact that this is happening is incredibly disturbing. The rest of the story here from Inside Radio, it's interesting. I recommend that you read it. It's in the show notes. Think that this is the goal here is to actually initiate a hearing, a very expensive, complicated process. Look, the pain of Ukrainian people at this point is unimaginable, and my heart is with Ukraine at this point. But the idea of revoking a license because you don't like content that does not explicitly in any way violate FCC regulations, that would be a very disturbing precedent. And the fact that it's even being called for, I am concerned about.
All right. And the thing is, folks, this environment that we're living in right now, it's only going to get worse. Now, we're going to be making some changes later on these next couple of weeks, hopefully sooner rather than later, on how we do our live streams, because we've been hit not once, but 6 times with different unfair strikes by YouTube. Now, YouTube is a private corporation, but it's acting like a publisher. And if it wants to act like a publisher even further, well, that's opening up a can of worms. But here you have, and again, an authoritative, trusted source saying to radio stations, do not play Sputnik. Do not have anything affiliated with any Russian media whatsoever. And that is wrong. I'm sorry, folks, but in order for us to continue to push forward and have a real media-savvy populace, we need to see all perspectives and points of view, and I believe in the intelligence of regular people to make their own decisions and conclusions. Now, if corporate media, big tech, or the two-party system gets offended by that, too bad, so sad, because they've already screwed up so many times. We have to have clear and open minds, and we have to start trusting ourselves, because let's face it, let's have democracy in chat before we end this segment, because I think it's very important to have it in this clip. Folks, democracy. Type 1 if you trust the authoritative sources like big tech, the two-party system, corporate media. Type 2 if you know damn well that they've lied to you and that you're intelligent enough to make your own damn decisions. There you go. That's democracy.